In 2560 BC, a man stood in the Egyptian desert and said, "I want to stack rocks higher than anyone has ever stacked rocks before." That man was Pharaoh Khufu, and the thing he wanted to build was the Great Pyramid of Giza. What happened next should have been impossible. Over the next 20 years, workers would move 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighed about 2.5 tons. That's the weight of a pickup truck. They moved them without wheels, without iron tools, without any of the machines we consider basic today. And they didn't just stack them. They stacked them with such precision that the base of the pyramid is almost perfectly flat. The entire thing is aligned to true north with an error of 0.15 degrees. We built skyscrapers with lasers that aren't that straight. For 3,800 years, this was the tallest man-made structure on planet Earth. No building would surpass it until the Eiffel Tower in 1889. And for 4,000 years, people have asked the same question. The answer is not aliens. It's not slaves. It's not lost technology. It's something much more interesting. By the end of this video, you will understand how the pyramids were actually built. Before we talk about how they built it, you need to understand what they built. The Great Pyramid was not just a pile of rocks. It was the largest construction project in human history until the 20th century. 2.3 million stone blocks. If you lined them up end to end, they would stretch from Cairo to London. The pyramid originally stood 146 meters tall. That's taller than a 40-story building. The base covers 13 acres. You could fit 10 football fields inside its footprint. Each side is 230 meters long. The difference between the longest and shortest side is less than 6 centimeters. The entire thing weighs approximately 6 million tons. For comparison, the Empire State Building weighs about 365,000 tons. The Great Pyramid weighs 16 times more. And here's the number that breaks everything. They built it in about 20 years. If they worked 10 hours a day, 365 days a year, they would need to place one stone every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes. A stone the weight of a pickup truck is cut, transported, lifted, and placed. For 20 years. Now you understand the scale. Let's figure out how they actually pulled this off. First, let's kill a myth. Slaves did not build the pyramids. In the 1990s, archaeologists discovered the workers' village near the pyramids. They found bakeries that produced thousands of loaves of bread. They found breweries. They found evidence of meat consumption, not the diet of slaves. They found tombs. The workers were buried near the pyramid with bread and beer for the afterlife. Slaves don't get honored burials. Archaeologists found medical evidence, too. Workers with healed broken bones, evidence of surgeries, amputations, even brain surgery. The Egyptian state was providing health care. One inscription reads, "Friends of Khufu." These workers were proud of what they were building. So who were they? About 20,000 to 30,000 skilled workers, organized into teams with names like the Drunkards of Menkaure and Friends of Khufu. These teams competed against each other. Graffiti shows trash talk between rival crews. Think less slavery and more massive government construction project with competitive labor gangs and free beer. The workers were farmers for most of the year. When the Nile flooded and farming was impossible, they traveled to Giza to work on the pyramid. Seasonal employment. a national project that employed thousands and fed them well. The pyramids weren't built by misery. They were built by organized, skilled, motivated workers who had bread, beer, and pride. So now you know who built the pyramids. But knowing who is only half the story. The real question is, how? Step 1. You need rocks. A lot of them. The pyramid used two main types of stone. Limestone for the bulk of the structure, granite for the burial chamber and internal passages. The limestone came from quarries right next to the pyramid. Convenient. The granite came from Aswan. That is 800 kilometers away. Not convenient. So how did they cut the stone? Iron tools did not exist yet in Egypt. The hardest metal available was copper. Copper is soft. Using copper tools to cut limestone is like trying to slice a steak with a butter knife. For the limestone, they used copper chisels and stone hammers. Pound, pound, pound. All day, every day. For the harder granite, they used stone pounders made of dolerite, an incredibly hard volcanic rock. Workers would literally pound the granite surface, crushing it into dust millimeter by millimeter. There was another clever technique. Drill a line of holes into the stone. Hammer wooden wedges into the holes. Pour water on the wood. The wood swells. The pressure splits the stone along a clean line. Simple physics. No advanced technology required. Just patience and clever thinking. The quarries were massive operations. Thousands of workers cutting, pounding, and splitting stone under the Egyptian sun. But cutting the stone was only the beginning. Now they had to move it. This is where people get confused. How do you move 2.3 million stones, each weighing as much as a car, across the desert? There is a famous wall painting from an Egyptian tomb that shows 172 men pulling a giant statue. The statue is on a wooden sledge. In front of the sledge, one man is pouring water onto the sand. For decades, archaeologists thought this was a ceremonial ritual. Then someone decided to test it. Researchers built a wooden sledge, loaded it with weight, and tried to pull it across dry sand. It dug in. It was nearly impossible. Then they poured water on the sand. The amount of force needed to pull the sledge dropped by 50%. Wet sand becomes firm. The sledge glides over it instead of digging in. The man in the painting wasn't performing a ceremony. He was doing practical physics. He was reducing friction. The Egyptians didn't have wheels for heavy transport. A wooden wheel under a 2.5-ton stone would splinter immediately. Instead, they used sledges, manpower, and wet sand. You might be wondering, how did they get the stone on the sledge? They used levers to tilt the stone, slid the sledge underneath, and tied it down with ropes. But they didn't drag stones across the desert for 800 kilometers. For the granite from Aswan, they used the Nile River. A lost branch of the Nile has been found. It ran right alongside the Giza Plateau. 4,500 years ago, it was a major waterway. The Egyptians built massive boats and barges. They floated the stones down the river. They built harbors and canals that brought the stone right to the base of the construction site. They weren't dragging stones across the desert. They were shipping them. The river did most of the work. So the stones are at the site. Now you need to stack them, higher and higher, until the pyramid is 146 meters tall. How do you lift a 2.5-ton stone 40 stories into the air without a crane? The short answer? Ramps. The long answer? Nobody fully agrees on what kind of ramp. Option 1, the straight ramp. Build one massive ramp from the ground straight up to the top. Simple. Effective. But for a ramp with a manageable slope, it would need to be over 1 kilometer long. And as the pyramid got taller, the ramp would need to get longer. By the time you reached the top, your ramp would contain more material than the pyramid itself. Option 2, the spiral ramp. Build a ramp that wraps around the outside like a corkscrew as it rises. But turning a team of men pulling a 2.5-ton stone around a corner on a narrow ramp is extremely difficult. Plus, the corners of the pyramid would need to be perfectly precise, which is almost impossible if a ramp is blocking your view. Option 3, the internal ramp. Build the ramp inside the pyramid, a tunnel spiraling up through the structure. This theory gained traction after a French architect spent years studying the pyramid. He found clues, strange density variations and unexplained cavities that suggest there might be a hidden internal ramp. Workers would haul stones up through the inside, and the ramp would be filled in as they went. But no one has definitively proven it exists. Scans have found gaps and voids, but nothing conclusive yet. The truth. It was probably a combination. Different ramps for different stages. A straight ramp for the lower levels, maybe an internal ramp for the upper sections. The Egyptians adapted as they went. They were problem solvers. Building something tall is one thing. Building something tall with insane precision is another. The base of the Great Pyramid is leveled to within 2 centimeters. That's across 13 acres. On a structure this size, that's essentially perfect. The 4 sides are aligned to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, with an error of 0.15 degrees. How? They probably used the stars. The Egyptians were excellent astronomers. They tracked the movement of stars and could find true north by observing the night sky. The outer casing stones, most of which were stripped away over centuries to build Cairo, were cut so precisely that you couldn't fit a human hair between them. The joints between stones are sometimes less than half a millimeter. That's thinner than papyrus. These stones were fitted together without mortar. They just sit against each other perfectly flush for thousands of years. The pyramid was originally covered in polished white limestone. It would have gleamed in the sun. You could see it from miles away. The capstone at the very top was likely covered in gold. Imagine standing in the desert 4,500 years ago. The sun is rising. The pyramid catches the light first, glowing white and gold against the desert, while the world around it is still in shadow. That's not a tomb. That's a statement. This brings us to the most important question. Why? Why did 20,000 people spend 20 years of their lives building this thing? The obvious answer, it was a tomb for the pharaoh. And yes, that's technically true. Khufu was buried inside. But the pyramids were more than tombs. They were economic engines. Building the pyramid required a massive workforce. Feeding that workforce required a massive agricultural system. Transporting materials required boats, harbors, canals. Organizing the whole thing required a government, administrators, record keepers. Training workers required education. Treating injuries required medicine. The Pyramid Project was essentially Egypt's version of a space program. It drove innovation, employed thousands, and unified the country around a shared purpose. It was also a religious statement. Egyptians believed the pharaoh became a god in the afterlife. The pyramid was a machine to launch the pharaoh's soul into the sky to join the gods. And maybe, on some level, they just wanted to show they could do it. The Great Pyramid is still there. Almost everything else from the ancient world is gone. The Hanging Gardens are dust. The Colossus of Rhodes is a memory. But the pyramid stands. 4,500 years. Wars, earthquakes, looters, pollution, millions of tourists touching the stones. It's still there. So what did we learn? The pyramids weren't built by slaves. They were built by skilled, paid workers who competed in teams and drank beer after their shifts. The stones weren't dragged across the desert. They were floated on the Nile to the base of the construction site. The stones weren't lifted by aliens. They were pulled up ramps by teams of workers using sledges, wet sand, and clever engineering. The precision wasn't magic. It was astronomy, careful measurement, and generations of accumulated knowledge. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was a national project that united a civilization. And here's the thing that gets me. We're still learning. In 2017, scientists found a massive hidden void inside the Great Pyramid. In 2023, they discovered the lost branch of the Nile. The pyramid hasn't given up all its secrets. The people who built the pyramid are long gone. Their names are mostly forgotten. But what they built is still standing, in the desert, under the sun, reminding us what humans are capable of when we work together. Not bad for a pile of rocks.